prices. That's the first time we've ever heard that. It's an interesting perspective for this committee. But with that, I recognize the gentleman from New York for 5 minutes, Mr. Jones.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And good morning, everyone. I'm very grateful to our witnesses for joining us today. I also want to recognize, of course, the distinguished chair of the full committee for participating and holding this vital hearing along with the chair of the subcommittee. Thanks to President Biden's American Rescue Plan, our economy is experiencing the fastest recovery in United States history. But obviously, we still have work to do. Today, the American people are facing higher prices, especially for food. The biggest corporations have sold us a self-serving story about why prices are up. They want us to believe that due to the pandemic, they've had no choice but to increase prices on the rest of us. But that's simply not true. Sure, costs are up for many businesses. No one disputes that. But last year, United States corporations made their highest profit margins since 1950. Consider the biggest driver of rising food prices: meat. According to the National Economic Council, since the start of this pandemic, 4 of the largest meat processing firms have increased their collective profits over 120%, or more than double. Tyson increased beef prices so much that although they sold less beef than before, they made more money. These firms have even given $3 billion to shareholders in stock buybacks and in dividends. The truth is, massive corporations do not have to impose record price increases on ordinary Americans amid this pandemic. Instead of paying their fair share of rising costs, they're making us pay the price, literally. Of course, if they actually faced competition from other companies, they couldn't get away with this. But as we've heard today, they rarely face competition at all. President Biden put it best: capitalism without competition is exploitation. Now, Ms. Johnson, you testified that key links in the food chain are controlled by just 4 massive corporations. For instance, in 1977, the 4 largest beef processing firms controlled just a quarter of the market. But today, they control over 80%. And as an investigation by The Guardian and the nonprofit Food and Water Watch documented, 4 firms or fewer dominate the markets for nearly 80% of groceries. Now, you opened your testimony by saying that although bad luck comes in 3s, market concentration comes in 4s. Would you care to elaborate on that for us? Specifically, how does the domination of a market by just 4 corporations enable those firms to raise prices beyond competitive levels?
Thank you for the question, Congressman. I'd like to talk about the kind of the rule of 4s, and then also raise some questions about it. So as a general concept, when you have very few companies who have outsized resources and power relative to any other competitors in the marketplace, their power and wealth become sort of self-reinforcing. They can undercut competitors with artificially low prices until they drive them out of business and then hike up prices once they're gone. They can enter into new markets, kind of self-subsidizing until they have their foothold established, and then use their resources to change rules, to lobby, to market, and do whatever it takes to succeed there at the expense of everyone else. And at the same time, I do caution against an over-focus on these numbers, because the other fundamental elements of our antitrust laws are qualitative. They're political, they're social, and they're about influence. And part of the problem with recent decades trends in antitrust enforcement is an outsized focus on the numbers alone and an outsized focus on driving down prices with no political and social checks. So what we're ultimately seeking with antitrust laws is to balance influence with price fairness, and to ensure that companies bear their own costs of doing business, not the public.
The time of the gentleman has expired.